Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a connection that sounds, well, impossible: Jesus Christ and communism. The source material for this explainer draws a direct line between the two, arguing they actually share a common ancestor. So, how on earth could two of history's greatest enemies have started in the same place? Let's get into it. All right, so let's just lay out the central puzzle here. For pretty much their entire histories, Christianity and communism have been defined as arch-enemies. One is built on God, faith, and salvation, the other on a godless state and a workers' revolution. They're polar opposites, right? So how can our source possibly make the claim that they aren't just similar but are identical twins?
To even begin to solve that puzzle, we have to peel back all the layers of political history, get past the manifestos and the scripture for a second, and go right back to the beginning. The argument presented here doesn't start with Karl Marx or with Jesus, but with a single, powerful Latin word, a word that planted the seeds for both of these world-changing movements.
And here it is. The entire argument really hinges on this one word: commune. Before it was political, before it was religious, it was just a simple, powerful idea. That which is held in common. Think of it as a shared public resource. According to the source, everything that follows grows from this single root. Now, what's really fascinating here is how this one root just blossoms into these concepts that we think of as totally separate. From commune, you get community, that's a social idea. You also get communion, a sacred Christian ritual of sharing. And from that very same root, you get communism, a political and economic ideology. The source's whole point is that this shared origin is absolutely not an accident. So this shared linguistic family tree, the source argues, points to something way deeper: a shared set of core ideals.
And this is the common ground. The argument is that both movements erupted from the very same human impulse, this deep frustration with a world that seems broken by private wealth and greed. Both of them rejected the inequality they saw around them, both critiqued the way private property could lead to moral rot, and both were trying to build a more just society based on this radical idea of common ownership.
So this ancient idea of holding things in common didn't just stay in the past. Oh no. It resurfaced in a big way in the modern world, taking on a life of its own and becoming, as one very famous text put it, a ghost that haunts the halls of power.
Marx and Engels chose their words so carefully here. They didn't call communism a plan or a party platform. They called it a specter, a ghost. And that's brilliant, because a specter isn't something you can just debate or ignore. It's an unsettling spirit that's already in the air, a presence that challenges the very foundation of the world as it is.
And for a good while there, it really seemed like that ghost had finally been vanquished.
I mean, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, political thinkers were rushing to write communism's obituary. The great ideological war was over. History had a clear winner. And it looked like that specter was finally put to rest for good.
But not everyone was so sure. And this led to a really fascinating philosophical debate. On one side, you had thinkers like Francis Fukuyama declaring the end of history, basically saying that liberal democracy had won, game over. But then, on the other side, you have the philosopher Jacques Derrida, who shot back that this wasn't a victory. It was just a collective exorcism. He argued that as long as the deep inequalities of capitalism still existed, the very conditions that summoned the ghost in the first place were still there, and it would keep coming back. Okay, but this is where the source material makes its most provocative and powerful move. It argues that if you want to find the original ghost, the first true commune, you have to look past Marx. You have to go back nearly 2,000 years to the very beginning of Christianity itself. The argument starts right here, with this ancient prophecy from the book of Isaiah. And notice the Messiah's mission. It's to bring good news to the poor and liberty to the oppressed. From the get-go, it's framed not just as a spiritual salvation, but as a profound social and economic liberation. And then you get this absolutely pivotal moment in the Gospel of Luke. Jesus stands up in a synagogue, reads that exact passage from Isaiah aloud, and then makes this stunning declaration: "Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." He's basically saying that mission of economic liberation, that's me. I'm doing it right now.
So the crucial point here is how our source interprets this event. It uses very modern, very political language to make its point, describing Jesus' ministry as a movement to liberate the proletariat of his day. The poor, the indebted, the marginalized, from what it bluntly calls the oppression of capital.
So what was the immediate result of this movement? I mean, what did it actually look like on the ground? Well, the book of Acts gives us a pretty clear picture. The very first Christian church is described as a community where everyone had everything in common. I mean, they literally sold their private property to create a common fund that was then distributed based on who needed it. So let's just connect the dots here. The early church, known as the ecclesia or holy assembly, practiced this radical fellowship or communion. And by holding all their property in common for the good of the needy, the source concludes that they were in essence the very first commune. The argument is that the first Christians weren't just believers. In practice, they were living as communists. And that brings us right back to where we started. But now, after tracing this shared family tree, the original puzzle becomes a deeply unsettling paradox.
And so we're left with this final, really haunting question. If these two world-changing ideologies are, as the source suggests, identical twins born from the very same desire for a just world without poverty, why has their shared history been one of gulags and inquisitions, of mutual persecution and total war? Is it a case of a sibling rivalry so intense, so profound, that, as the source asks, one concluded, to survive, I must destroy the you that looks so much like me? The source leaves that for us to ponder.